Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone out there who wants to find me on Instagram and social media, that's at Justin Bizzarro. And you can find the podcast, Justin the Food Entrepreneurs, on Instagram and Facebook as well. Today I have with us Rusty Bowers of Pine Street Market from Avondale Estates, Georgia. How are you doing today, Rusty?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to be back.
Yeah, so anyone in the audience who doesn't know, Rusty was on the podcast actually almost exactly a year ago. It was back on February 1st, 2019, episode 5. So Rusty was one of the, I think you were actually the third interview podcast we did. So you were one of the OGs on the podcast.
Oh, that's an honor.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And I just think it's really cool what you guys have done since then. And we talked a little bit about Flavor of Georgia back then, and then got to see you at Flavor of Georgia last year, which was awesome, with your bacon jam product.
Yes.
And there's a lot of other things going on. So I sort of just want to dive deep into your progress and where you've come since then. So, but first, give everyone a quick background on yourself again, just to update everyone in case they haven't listened to episode 5.
So I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and started cooking, I guess, in 92 or 93 at resorts in Florida, resorts and fine dining restaurants, and quickly realized that everybody in the world has to eat. So sold my car, moved to Maui, worked there for like a year. So I took that money, went to Eastern Europe and the Middle East for about 18 months, working in Austria and Turkey, and then came back and with a little bit of help from my parents, went to Culinary Institute of America up in New York, and then moved to Atlanta to work for a fine dining restaurant, and quickly realized that wasn't really my passion. And so around that time, met Wes and Charlotte with Riverview Farms up in Ranger, Georgia by Rome, and understanding that back in 2007, 2008, nobody was buying, or no one was really selling humane meat, especially local humane meat, at a grocery store level. So that kind of sparked the beginning of Pine Street Market. So we just turned 11 years old back in December. And so it's been a good ride. And yesterday was our 1-year anniversary for Chop Shop, the store that I co-own with Riverview Farms in Midtown Atlanta.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit about when you say humane animals. What are you saying there? Just I want to define it for the audience, because I like the way you phrased it versus some of the other marketing terms that are out there. That's a truer term, in my opinion, to what actually goes on.
Absolutely. So humanely raised meat to me are animals that are treated fairly, treated appropriately, not treated like a pet. I get kind of hot under the collar about the debate of outdoor chickens versus chickens that are inside and protected, which is a whole nother topic. But humanely raised meats, meaning that they're out, their feet are on the ground, they're not on concrete, they're non-GMO feed, that there's passion and care, and not only how they're raised, but also how they're harvested. That we want to know that the animal never felt pain and never saw it coming. And so that the way they're harvested to me is as important as the way they're raised.
Yeah. So I want to actually talk about that a little bit, because if you don't mind, is the pet versus the food. Right. And the debate, and you talked about getting hot under the collar a little bit. So let's really dive into it from your perspective, because you are the butcher. You're the person, what Pine Street Market does is butchering, So let's talk about the perspective from your standpoint.
I know that a lot of people disagree with my viewpoint on it, and that's fine. And that's wonderful. And that's the way that they can feed their families and run their companies. But what I feel is, if you've got, let's say, 100,000 chickens outside in the field, you are going to have a coyote problem, a bald eagle problem, whatever problem. Coyote, wolves. Those chicken cannot protect itself. It can't fly. It doesn't have sharp teeth. It doesn't have claws. That chicken, just like me, I don't want to be outside where I'm surrounded by scary animals. I want to be inside a safe room to where there's air conditioning, plenty of feed. we work a lot with Springer Mountain Farms chicken, and that is the only chicken that I'll use. It's even the only chicken that I'm looking at our little cockapoo right now. Every week I boil 2 Springer Mountain chicken, and in that water cook her brown rice, peas, and carrots, chop the chicken with a little bit of Springer chicken liver, mix it back in there, and that's her food every day. But I know that their chickens are safe. I know that their hoop houses, if it can hold 90,000 chickens, they've got 30,000 in there. And you go in there, there's not a weird smell. The chickens are safe. And I think a lot of people, to get over their guilt of eating meat, want to go, hey, look at that. That chicken's outside playing kickball and lives this beautiful, fun life. And his name was Carl. And you're like, you don't have to. There's a point where our carnivore guilt exceeds the growth of a good, humane piece of meat. And if that chicken was only born to be consumed, it wasn't born to be on a poster. It wasn't born to be out running beside your dog and being a pet. It was born to be consumed. And having good discussions with Charlotte and Wes about that as well, about how do you justify, like the dog I just talked about, how do I justify my love of that dog versus I'm okay with that pig that I may field dress or, have. We just got 5 pigs and a boar from Riverview a few minutes ago. How do I justify my feeling about that versus my love for my dog? And it's, one's a pet and another one was born and raised to be consumed. So to me, it's understanding that difference and understanding you don't have to, if it's a healthy, humane animal, you have to raise it to just like vegetables. You wouldn't plant your vegetables inside your house. They would be outside in the field, and you've got to look at food as food.
Yeah. And one of the things that I want to touch upon is sort of, we all eat and we all drink drinks and whatever, but we all have our preferences. And if those preferences weren't popular amongst groups of people, there wouldn't be the businesses to supply them, because businesses are built out of finding solutions or taking a need and, fulfilling that need. And so whatever the perspective is, I mean, obviously there's a group of people that are like you in the way that you eat or similar, and then you choose to do it. And if there's enough, there's a business around it. So trying to get people to do one way or the other, it's kind of an interesting concept. Like, as a business, I would prefer locally grown and being sustainable going through our facilities, right? I think that's the right thing to do, but that's my opinion. And and not all of my clients want that food or care about whether or not it's organic or whatever. They just want to do a good product, and their clients, and their customers don't care whether it's organic or not. And so it's one of those things where no matter how much I see it that way and I want to be true to myself, I do also understand that my clients have customers that are loyal to them in the way that they eat. So it's hard because you want to make the world a better place and you want to have the animals humanely handled. I think that's the important part. And then from there, like you said, if they're in a chicken coop or they're outside, it starts getting debatable. What is the best life for that animal? And it's like, here in Colorado, we had, 5 coyotes running around our property for months. For whatever reason, we're now down to 1. But whether they split off, but they all came with a mother. There was a mother and 5 cubs or whatever they're called.
Yikes. Yeah.
And they were running around. Well, we have a Cocker Spaniel. That dog is not going to stand a chance against 5 coyotes.
Right. Yeah.
So what do? I keep him inside. Or if I go outside, he's not off the leash right now with coyotes running around. Like, that's just not going to happen. And you can do all you want to try to scare him away and, shoot him or whatever you want to do. But regardless, if the coyotes are going to come around, they're looking for food. And whatever it is, whether it's rabbits, chickens, that's what they're going to come around. And unless I wanted a whole fleet of dogs, that are massive, that would not, would cause some living issues for myself and Deborah and the kids, then, I can't deal with it. So I think having an open-minded perspective is important, just like anything else in life. We all differ and we all have different opinions, but when we run our businesses as entrepreneurs like yourself, we get to choose how we want to bring that forward. So debating with us, it's like one of those things. I want to hear your point, and please, I want everyone to have their opinion. I think we're entitled to it.
Right.
And I think it's good for discussion. But at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, we're servicing clients because that's what they want, or customers. And so, it's one of those things where it's great that you're having the argument with me as the owner of the business, but I'm satisfying a need of all these customers. So it's more than just me,
Right.
So it's one of those things, if we really take a step back and think about it altruistically, what is the best for everyone, and how do we do it? And, at some point you can't force people to do something, it's just like their job. You're not going to tell an engineer to suddenly become a chef.
Right.
I'm not going to tell a vegan to suddenly be a carnivore. It's just not going to happen, right? So it's the same idea. But let's dive into the story about the boar, because we were talking about it earlier, and you just had a boar show up at you. But I like this story, and just really quickly, the Riverview Farms episode was episode 71, where we talk with Charlotte from Riverview Farms. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to that episode, that's episode 71. But so, Rusty, give us a little, tell us the story about the boar, because I think it's important. One, because it talks about the freshness of the product, but two, it talks about the cycle that we were just discussing, one, humanely, and two, the purpose of the animal.
Well, because working hand in hand with Riverview Farms is one of the cornerstones of what we do, to where it's that it doesn't really dawn on people until you phrase it correctly, but you can't go out in the field, and if a chef says, hey, I need one ham, Riverview can't go out in the field and cut a leg off a pig and the pig runs away. You've got to move that whole pig.
Yep.
And so that's where we originally developed, over 10 years ago, started to develop our relationship to where we would get kind of the lesser used cuts, and now it's kind of their customers have stepped up, their chefs and retail customers, and with Chalk Shop as well, to where we're able to primarily just get the whole animals in. Sometimes there'll be like extra bellies or extra shoulders. But I think the best example of that is that boar. So Wes will call me, and disclaimer is a little gruesome. But Wes will call me, and he'll be out in the field with a 22, and he'll say, hey, I'm looking at a boar, and this is a boar who's not doing his job. He's not breeding anymore. He's just consuming a lot of food and just being angry and knocking down fences or trees and, all that testosterone. Yeah. So he's looking at that boar holding the 22, and he'll go, hey, can you take a boar this week? And I'll go, yeah, and hang up. And I know exactly what happens next. That boar is harvested in the field and then taken to the processor. But I love that. I love that an animal that has no longer doing their purpose on the farm, and, farm life is not easy. It's not highly profitable. So if this animal is just hanging out every day, eating food and being a jerk, he's got to go. Yeah. So it's just so neat that they can just be like, can you take this boar? The answer is always yes, because we can do whiskey brine boar steaks, boar salami, rosemary smoked boar sausages, like all these wonderful things with it. So absolutely we can take it. But I like that there's a use for us. Like in that moment, it's like, okay, I'm going to get rid of this boar. It's not only going to stop costing me money, we're going to make money with it and honor its life. Go. So I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. And one of the things that I really love that you talked about is, even in the boar scenario, is being able to use the whole animal. I don't think we realize, when you go to a grocery store, you have these cuts of meat, but no one realizes that you need to use the whole animal. I think one of the greatest things that happened to chicken was chicken wings, but now the demand for chicken wings is more than the other parts of the chicken, so it throws off the scale a little bit. But what happens is, and we run into this in our business all the time, our customers only want certain cuts of beef, or they only want ground beef, or they only want this cut, but it'd be better if we bought the whole cow, So it's like, how do you get people to transition over to those other items? And that's what you're doing, which is, if you can find a way to get people to understand that all parts of the animal are good, it's pretty cool. And I know in parts of South America, they use every part. Like they stuff the intestines and they do blood sausage and they do all these things. And it's actually very good, but it's the willingness to try it. So, on one hand, we can worry about how the animal's raised or whatever. And I think humanely, no matter what it is, indoor, outdoor is the right way to do it. But on the other hand, we should also argue that we shouldn't waste the animal. We need to figure out in the way we shop and are as consumers that we need to be more familiar and efficient, or what's the word I'm looking for, more familiar and more dedicated to going into the grocery store and getting those other parts of the animal, because that is the responsible thing. This animal is raised to be food. We should make use of its entire meat that's on it, because wasting it, that's where we go wrong. And it's like,
it's so disrespectful and so costly to waste it.
Yeah. And I think
our goal.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Our goal at Pine Street Market is at the end of the day, you can lift a 55-gallon trash can with 2 fingers, because it should just be spent packaging or paper towels or things like that in there. It shouldn't be usable meat or bones or skin. All of that needs to be sold. All of that needs to go. So we've got a great infrastructure. We've got some wonderful ramen restaurants, Salaryman and Ramen Station, that use up all of our leftover bones, skins, and heads that we can't get, that we don't wind up processing, but we use every single part of that animal.
Well, and one of the things I wonder is, and I love this too, because now we're seeing like bone broths is becoming a big thing. So even the bones of the animals are being used and not burned. And we should do that. I know at some point you're going to have to get rid of some waste from the animal. Don't get me wrong. I'm not thinking we're going to eat a hoof or something. But there's probably ways we can become more efficient with it. I hear people making soap, and there's these ways that we're getting rid of things. Okay, so what's the humane thing to do? Okay, it's raised properly. What's also the humane thing to do is make sure his life wasn't wasted. And that if we're going to have animals to eat, that we also use their other parts of their body to live off of our fine, efficient ways. Why use something that's chemical or artificial when we have these animals that we can get it from to make soap or whatever it is? So, when we start thinking that way, we start finding a lot more solutions, and we're more efficient. There's less pollution, there's less waste, there's less energy wasted, there's less mistreatment of the animals, because we know we have to use their entire body, and therefore you're more humane in the way you raise them, understanding they're still for food. And I like what you guys are doing, and I like your philosophy, which is why I love having you on the podcast. So
thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the Chop Shop, the partnership with Riverview Farms, because like we said, it was about a year ago you opened up Chop Shop ATL, or Atlanta, for those who don't know what ATL stands for. And tell us a little bit about what that journey is like, because you've already opened Pine Street Market, so you have some experience, but now you're going into a partnership with Riverview Farms, who happens to be the same guy, Wes, who's the guy who calls you when there's a boar available, as an example. So let's dive into that.
Okay. So it was just after Valentine's Day when we opened. So it was a year ago yesterday. It's been really interesting and challenging, and both good and bad. I mean, at its core, Riverview, they've never had business partners. I've never had business partners. So that alone, having to learn how to work together and learn how to respect, and the trust fall exercises you have to do by having business partners, that's been a really great, challenging, frustrating, fun thing working with them. And it's going well. Two, I can't magically be in 2 places at once. So I've got to share our Pine Street philosophy and train the staff at Chop Shop. And we're lucky to have an amazing general manager there right now. We've gone through a few general managers in our first year. And we now have landed on somebody that every Friday he comes over to Pine Street, and we have like a nice long meeting about any management issues, any customer issues, and then we start cutting meat. So 2 weeks ago, we started to explore all the cuts and the chuck of the beef, which is kind of like the pork butt of beef, and pulling out different steaks and different ways to make money on that, and different ways to grind the beef versus grinding the pork, and just different methods, and just kind of sharing my philosophy with him and my examples that I've picked up over the past couple decades on cooking and butchering. And so that's been a challenge of how do our shared philosophies be in Riverview, Pine Street, and Chop Shop all at the same time? And then also, how do we differentiate Chop Shop from Pine Street and Riverview? And so that's been a good challenge too. But it's been very eye-opening. I think having two businesses is more like having three, because part of my day is that drive between, and that's when I can get a lot done and do things to promote both companies separately, to identify. Because if we didn't clearly define the difference between Pine Street and Chop Shop, if I don't clearly define it, I can't tell my managers, who can't tell our staff, and they can't tell the customer. So if it has to start at the top. And so to me, Chop Shop is a beautiful meat-driven market, while Pine Street Market is kind of that is the point of origin. That is the butcher shop. So you've got the two differences. Sorry. And Chop Shop also is about to have its liquor license to open Swine Bar, which will be a tiny little bar on premise, as well as the patio, and sell beer and wine in the shop. So that'll also help as well.
I love the name, the Swine Bar. That's
our beverage manager came up with that. Yeah, I love that.
And so let's dive a little more into the differences between the two, and sort of how you manage that, because it's a very in-depth thing, and in a way you're vertically integrating, right? So Riverview Farms supplies Pine Street Market with the meats, but Chop Shop
receives the meats from Pine Street Market. So our logo is a circle to represent that full circle farming, is what we call it.
Yeah, and I love this concept, because it's you want to grow a business. You want to, people are like, oh, I need more stores. Okay, sure. And that's true in some cases. But the real thing you need to do is the vertical integration, because that's where the profitability is made in between. It's those in-between stepping-ons that take away profitability from a restaurant or from a butcher or from a farm, right? So if you actually integrate the thing like you guys have done, there seems to be greater opportunity. You have more opportunity to be creative. You can sort of do things that are unusual, because you're controlling the chain of custody of that animal all the way through, for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so let's dive into that and sort of that concept and how you see that.
Well, I see like Chop Shop has a panini press. They do daily. They have a meat grinder behind the counter and grind burgers. They do a daily burger, a pork burger, and they have all those patty and ready to go. They can grind meat to order. They've got the panini press. They've got different It's more like Pine Street is the carpentry shop, while Chop Shop is the furniture store. So it's a lot more high end. Even the classes that we do, like we'll do a cold smoking class or a meat, cheese, and wine class at Chop Shop, but at Pine Street we'll do the whole hog class, sausage making. So Pine Street's the more the rough and tough butcher shop version, while Chop Shop is the 1,300 square foot, beautiful naturally lit store with a lot of Georgia grown products. And then a lot of more of the, we'll always have like beef tenderloin there and chicken breast there. Well, those are two items that won't be at Pine Street.
Yeah. So explain that to me a little more. So are you still, you're obviously butchering the meats at Pine Street, but you're taking it a level up. So you're value adding into Chop Shop. And I mean, talk to me about, it's been a year. I mean, how has that gone? I mean, has it become popular? Are people going in? Obviously, you're opening the Swine Bar, so it seems like you're starting to draw crowds and you've got interest. And now to take an additional step to add to your profitability, which is to sell alcoholic beverages. But sort of tell me about how you value add into Chop Shop.
So Chop Shop has my fiance Summer designed these really cool like it looks like a sushi menu, but it's the charcuterie and cheese menu. So you can go in and you check off if you want Brezola or Copa or Speck, if you want Sequatchie Cove or Green Hill or whatever cheese to go with it. And then we have some handcrafted local cutting boards. You can either bring in your own board or use one of the boards there. These are things that at Pine Street you can point out what you want, but you don't have that beautiful menu and those pre-made boards. So it's something you would take home and assemble at home if you got it from Pine Street. Chop Shop too, we have like the it's things are deli case ready when they get there, but you still have like we train the staff how to like slice the steaks, how to cut the pork chops, trim the pork butt, and there is still some like finishing butchery work there as kind of the theater of the more high end meat driven community market. So it really it's having that idea of, we would never like post a photo at Pine Street of look at this salami and then share the same post on Chop Shop. Yeah. We want to try to say, look at these hand cut beautiful steaks that we're cutting to order at Chop Shop, and then at Pine Street, like, hey, we just got a side of beef in that we're breaking down. And so it's a little more elegant at Chop Shop, while it's a little more functional and actual at Pine Street. And I guess that's been talking that daily with the employees and kind of coaching our social media people. We made sure to have 2 separate social media people for both businesses. So the message will clearly be different because it's coming from 2 different people. And they have like their certain filters they use, and certain hashtags are different per location. So it didn't look like Pine Street Market version 2. It's like, oh, this is a completely different concept.
Yeah, I love that. And so on that note, you were in dining before, and when you were talking about Jacksonville and then to Hawaii and all of that, but then you got into being a butcher, basically, and then value added your butcher shop, because we've talked about Bacon Jam and things like that and Flavor Georgia before, but now you're sort of getting back into the restaurant game, for lack of a better term, and into that side. I mean, are you seeing you've gained these new skills with Pine Street Market, and now you're taking those new skills and applying them to some of your old skills? Would you say that that's true?
Yes, and it's the flavor profiles, and like the classes we're doing at Chop Shop are more challenging to my culinary background, and so having to come up with various sides for the meat, cheese, and wine class, or sauces to go with the cold smoking class, things like that, and then flavor profiles of sandwiches and all that. What I'm trying to not do, which I'm consciously trying not to do, is make it to where you go to Chop Shop and order a finished burger or barbecue plate, or so people are wanting that. So we're bringing in chefs like the sous chef at Boca Lupo, where it's is an amazing, beautiful Italian pasta restaurant that everyone should go try. He will come out and do barbacoa. So he will come out and do something that's completely not what he does every day. So he'll be there once a month on the patio cooking the food. So we have an Israeli chef doing shawarma. We have some other people doing sandwich pop-ups and soup pop-ups, but trying to keep us away from accidentally stepping into that restaurant category. And then people are like, oh, you're a restaurant that also sells meat. Like, no. We're a meat-driven market that has pop-up chefs to come in and do a lot of this stuff. So it's by doing that keeps us away from stumbling in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's like what the breweries in Colorado do with food trucks. It's like they just a little bit different. I would say your version's much more upscale, but a little bit. You're trying to not define yourself, but you're creating an opportunity. And I love that concept, by the way. I think that varying the menu is so important today, and bringing in guests, but sticking to your core competency and not complicating it is pretty great. And I love this idea. The pop-up thing is becoming a big deal, and to give the opportunity to chefs to step out of their daily life to go do something with you as a pop-up on random to challenge themselves, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because even as a chef, you can get stuck into that Italian pocket or French pocket to where you're like, man, I really want to. I know I'm working at a French restaurant, but how badass would it be to do a taco pop up and like, hey, we're here, you can do it. So that's been fun. Like what? Because their excitement, the chef's excitement, and the people that they bring to work with them, like it is. You walk up and you're like, whoa, this is like high energy. Like they are excited to like, play with food and have fun with it and meet that need of feeding our customers.
And recently on the last couple episodes, we've been talking a lot about this, which is the creativity. And so if you're stuck doing the same thing day in and day out, you start to get in this rut and you become less creative because you're not exercising that skill. And so doing something like you're talking about, it gives them a chance to be creative outside of their day-to-day. And in that experience, if they're creative outside of their day-to-day, they most likely are going to go back and now be more creative in their day-to-day because they had an opportunity to do it outside of it. And it's an interesting thing that happens. We as human beings, we like habits and we like routine, and that includes creativity. So you're really giving people an opportunity as chefs to go be creative outside of their day-to-day. And then hopefully, in my opinion, which is great for businesses, is then take that experience and put creativity back into their business on a larger scale.
I love that. Yeah. It's a great way of looking at it.
So Rusty, tell me, we've talked about your favorite things with Pine Street Market, but let's talk about Chop Shop. I mean, what have been your favorite things and challenges that you've sort of had to overcome in opening Chop Shop and getting it off the ground?
Well, part of it was just working in the confinements of the city of Atlanta. And I didn't realize, it's one of those, like, you don't realize how good you've got it until you branch out, but how good I've got it with the city of Avondale Estates, to where I could just go walk in to the city manager's office unannounced and get something signed or completed and leave, while dealing with the city of Atlanta being so gigantic and so slowed down with bureaucracy. You add, instead of a day, you can add 4 or 5 weeks. That was a challenge. Another part of the challenge was people really didn't know what we were when we first opened. So it's training people, and we have been very fortunate with both Riverview's customers and Pine Street's customers. There's a lot of trust that's been earned to where they will come up to a Riverview market booth, or they'll come up to the counter at Pine Street and go, what's new? What's good? What should I have for dinner? And that really is like, that takes years and years to build that trust, where they're like, okay, I know that there's a certain level that everything's going to be at when I get it. So I'm going to branch out and try new things. But going into a new neighborhood, and people just kind of, at first were like, I'm here for a New York strip or a ribeye. And they're like, well, hold on, let's talk about the world of flat irons and Denver steaks and chuck ribeyes and top sirloin. And it's earning their trust, and through sampling and through educating our employees, really getting the customer to go, oh, okay, I get it. Like, this is about sustainable meat. This isn't about the cheapest place to get a chicken breast. So I now understand what's going on. So through like cooking on the Big Green Egg, and through sampling, and through educating the staff, we really got to where the customers got educated and are now like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to come in and try this unusual thing, or I'm going to branch out. Instead of, a ribeye per person, what if I went with, a steak Florentine that I cut up at the table and fanned out, and everybody grabbed slices instead of a giant steak. Yeah. And then kind of explaining it through that with people.
I love that. And I think what you're doing is, it's more than just food. You're building a relationship with these people through value adding things that help them, right? Like, what a great way to build a memory, instead of just, I went to the store and I got a steak and I grilled it up and I threw it on the table. By differentiating the offerings and giving people the knowledge on how to do that, it becomes a memory or an experience, because it's out of the routine. When things become routine, they don't stay as well in our short-term and long-term memory. Right. But when we differentiate it, those memories start to stick, and that's why people are like, oh, it's always the bad times you remember, and and stuff like that. But that doesn't have to be true. If you alter things still in a good way and enjoy it, they become part of the memory, which is why I love food and beverage so much, is because food and beverage is the vehicle by which we build memories. You know, we surround ourselves with it with every interaction with our family and with our friends and with our coworkers. At some point or another, we're always eating together or drinking together. So it's how do we build the memories in a more positive way, you know? So I think what you're doing is that it's building those memories in the positive way. And again, there's a couple podcasts where I talk about this, but I think when we start to see as restaurants or as butcher shops or as whatever we're in, that it's more than just food. We're in making the food good is absolutely important, but that's the bare minimum. You know, that's the basis, and how do you build off it? And you're doing that. You're teaching classes and educating and help people build memories. Go ahead.
Well, it's to me, it's been really eye-opening, because having right out of high school, becoming a chef, a professional chef, I take for granted just the secondhand, or just the knowledge that I've picked up that to me is just common sense, is really not common sense. And even like in the whole hog class, as we're cutting and explaining why I'll never sell you a baby back rib, I'll sell you spare ribs, because baby backs are just a marketing ploy. Explaining just simple things like that, or why a pork butt, even though it's the shoulder, is called a butt. And then and what the difference between that and a ham is, anatomy wise, really opens up people's eyes, and like, oh, I get it. Like, that's why ham is dry and shoulder is chewy, or that's why you have to braise a baby back rib, but you can just straight up grill a spare rib. And they start understanding that, and then that carries to build their confidence. And a lot of what we're doing, and when we talk with new hires, is we're here to take the fear out of meat. So a lot of people will look at that raw piece of chicken and go, I undercook it, I kill my family. I overcook it, I just ruin dinner. So we started putting out, instead of recipe cards, technique cards. Like, here's tips on how to cook chicken. Here's why you brine and how to make a brine. Here's how to cook the proper way to cook a steak. And that really builds people's confidence and takes that fear out. And then they're willing to kind of take a risk and roll the dice on dinner, instead of saying, I've got my 5 recipes and that's it. They can go, oh, okay, now I'll try, braising that chuck eye roast, or I'll, whatever. And that's just been a lot of fun.
I absolutely love that concept, and I love the cards and what you're doing. I think that's it makes so much sense, but it's such a value add in building the relationship with your customers and helping them build relationships in their home by doing things like that and having the food be better. And who doesn't love a comment when they're at home and they've cooked a really good meal and someone's like, oh my God, Mom or Dad, that was really good. And it makes you feel fulfilled, because day in and day out, we're routinely cooking and feeding and whatever, and the kids and kids' friends, and to have that comment or that compliment is pretty awesome. Absolutely. And so you're giving people that sort of that ability to have that compliment or that comment, which I think is really awesome.
Well, it was really early on, like teaching and doing demos and doing recipes. And you hand somebody this recipe that calls for a teaspoon of thyme, and they either don't like the thyme or forgot to buy it from the grocery store. And now they're like, well, I can't make dinner. I don't have the thyme. Or the rosemary. That was a weird pun. But by giving them the techniques, they can then be like, oh, okay, I'm not glued to a recipe. That recipe really just means sear the meat and poach it in liquid and let it go for an hour. Oh, okay, the ingredients are the ingredients that I like. But teaching the method and the tips is what empowers them to, then their kids are like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different way you've made salmon. And you're like, right, I learned tips, not a recipe.
Yeah, and it gives them confidence because they're learning it from someone who does it for a living, right? Which, you're passing down knowledge and educating people, which is such an important part of the experience. I don't think we do that enough as in society. We miss the opportunity to educate people or help people grow, and that's what you're doing. And I think that's immensely important because, one, you're solving a problem, which is food. But what you're
Right.
also doing is you're helping people because you're bettering their lives and their relationships by helping them do that. And I think
That's really, yeah.
it's really cool.
Thanks.
So I'm
Yeah, I
probably going
never
to
really
get
looked at it like that.
no, yeah. But
Yeah.
I think it is exactly what's going on, and the
Right.
loyalty there, from a customer standpoint, because you're value adding that and you're giving them those compliments, they're subconsciously or consciously they're knowing they're getting it because you taught them it. And
Right.
so that's really cool experience, and loyalty and loyal customers and repeat buyers are just so important to all businesses.
Oh,
So
definitely.
I'm going to get this question, I'm sure, and I know other people are going to Google it, but I might as well ask you, because you brought it up, about the pork butt and it actually being a shoulder and why it's called a pork butt, even though it's coming from
Sure.
the shoulder.
So I am a history nerd. I love to learn about like presidential history and food history, and just it kind of goes to that why question. Why is that like that, and why is that? So with the pork butt, back in colonial times, we would take the boats back and forth to Europe, and to make that long voyage, we would need to salt and preserve meat to take with us. So you would take a squared off piece of the shoulder, which is an excellent boiling meat, and pack it in wooden barrels called butts and layers of salt. And then throughout the journey, you would boil that meat to get that salt off of it and shred it and just eat that shredded boiled meat. Boston was the major shipping harbor at the time, and the barrels were called butts. So that cut of meat got nicknamed Boston butt.
I love that, and that is, and that's pretty amazing, and I love the
Yeah,
tie there. But there's all sorts of things that happen like that, like hamburger. Everyone's like, "Oh, it doesn't have ham in it." No, it has more to do
right.
with the history and its originality than actually why that it has ham in it. But it's one of those things that are just so cool, and I'm sure that as a history person, and I love history. I love the fact that we can see things, especially food, or I like military history too. We learn a lot of
Hmm.
things from it, and hopefully not make the same mistakes. But
Right.
it's such a fascinating way to learn things and educate people, because there's so many fun facts that just sort of come out of all of it. That's pretty cool. Deborah and I were just in the Netherlands, and
Oh, wow.
for Valentine's Day, and we went to this place, and everyone's like, you got to go here. It's Winkle 43, I think is the name. And we go there, and we don't. They're like, you gotta have the apple pie. We're like, okay, so we'll go to the apple pie. But we didn't realize that the only thing this place served was apple pie all day long.
Oh, wow.
Thousands of slices a day,
Yeah.
and all of that. But there was a whole history behind it, and why they did it, and the recipe that they used, and the story and the history of it, and where apple pie comes from, and all of that just sort of is like, holy crap,
Yeah.
but that's the important part. And years down the road, people are going to want to know the same things about Pine Street Market or Chop Shop. Like, when you look at it from the rearview mirror, you're like, oh my God, they accomplished so much, and look what they did, and look how they tied the concepts together, and all the help they've done me. But at the time you're dealing with it, you're like, holy crap, like, how am I going to get through this? So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned training your managers differently and your employees differently at each location. So
Sure.
how do you differentiate that? Because I mean, the easiest thing to do would be to train them the same way. That would be the easy road. But you're taking the hard road, which I think is the right road. But explain that a little bit.
So at Pine Street Market, it's of course the butchers go through all the training on the USDA protocol and interacting with our inspectors and all the different ways of butchering. But as far as the retail employees at Pine Street, they're doing a lot of finishing work. So they're making hot honey mustard, they're making pâtés and rillettes, bacon jam, slicing smoked salmon, making and slicing smoked salmon. All these things that keep them busy every single day when you have your slow time. At Chop Shop, they're not in production, so you're now like, okay, let's get you. So each of the Chop Shop employees have done at least one class at Pine Street Market to understand just the culture and the reason behind what we're doing. And it's easier to have someone join a class of like 12 to 15 people than for me to sit down across the table and just drone on and on. So it's better for them to experience it that way. But also with the employees at Chop Shop, we're looking for the creativity of how do you teach the creativity of when we make a panini, I'm not sending you to Publix or Kroger to get cheese or to get spreads. We're using everything in this building to make our sandwiches. So you're using Unicoi preserves, you're using due south pickles, you're using some gooey Green Hill cheese, you're using the different meats that we've cooked on the egg, because the last thing you want is someone to bite into that sandwich and go, what's in this? Well, ma'am, if you go to Walmart and get their pepper spread, you get like, no, it's not what we're doing. So training them to be creative with what's in front of them, which is not a thing that you have to do at Pine Street. So it's a little bit more difficult with them, with customers, because all the customers are fairly new. A lot of people have shopped with probably both Pine Street and Riverview at open air farmers markets, but we're in a very dense part of Midtown with customers we haven't reached before. So it's being able to talk with them about, what is bacon jam? How do you use it? And then demonstrate, how to properly cook a pork chop and all these things, which is something we kind of take for granted at Pine Street.
So tell me a little bit, we've talked about bacon jam before, and I want to segue into it because I think it's such an outstanding product that you have.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about what are the different uses of bacon jam? Because I think it's a little side conversation that I think is pretty cool.
So to back up, the recipe development at Pine Street isn't just going to be like, hey, let's source a piece of lamb to make lamb merguez. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. So things like the bacon jam, the beef butter, bacon burger, head cheese are all part of whole animal usage and whole product usage. So the best example is that bacon jam. So when we square off the bellies after we smoke them, you trim them up, and those first couple slices or last couple slices that are irregular get ground up with onions and garlic and spices like cumin and smoked paprika, and then cooked with a little bit of molasses and cider vinegar to give that spreadable quality, almost like a preserve. We'll mix it with our bone broth for like braising kale and collards, put it on a cracker, put it on a piece of cheese, spread it on a cooked chicken breast. It's got just a lot of versatility to it.
I love that, and this is a great example, and I love that you took it full circle there, which is using the whole animal, and there you have this successful product that, is that flavor of Georgia that has just done so well, and it was sort of something that you came up with because you needed to use things that were normally going to go to waste.
Right, so it's not just from a cost perspective. Well, it's interesting because it is part of small business that you either pay for something to go into a trash can and get hauled away, so you not only lost money, but you've now paid someone to take it away, or you figure out how to make it profitable, and then it's that same crossover with that whole animal and whole product utilization that you don't want to waste anything.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it encourages creativity also, like we talked about earlier, so you're trying to get creative with the things that you have, so it's encouraging the creativity. And then the other part of it is the interesting thing that happens, particularly in food and beverage, and I talk about this a lot on podcasts, and I can't emphasize it enough because it's true in our own business, is that when you start off your business and you go with your initial product and purpose, yes, you want to be dedicated to that, but you don't want to stay so true to it that you don't find opportunities in other products to expand your product line. Because
right.
Opportunities, oddly in food, it's usually not the first items you've created that become the most popular or successful. It's sort of years down the road,
right.
Sometimes even decades, that become these really popular items because you were pivoting or learning. And that doesn't mean your original product isn't still there. It's just you've adapted and evolved and been willing to be creative, and something happens, and I don't know what it is, whether it's 10,000 hours or you finally figure out something that works, or in your case, you didn't want to waste something, but it forces us to be creative and create new product lines, which I think is cool. And not only have you created new product lines, but it's even got you so creative that you've taken the next step in a partnership with Riverview Farms to create the Chop Shop.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because it took me several years to realize I'm not my customer. I'm not the person I'm going after for the sale. So it took me having that aha moment of that to say, okay, I would never want to spend that much money on steak or chicken at the register. But the second that we started selling it, they sell great because people understand the value of it and understand the reasoning behind it. And I also, being so close to the Cab Farmers Market, I'm like, no one's going to want to buy sausage from us. And now sausage is our biggest seller next to bacon. And it really took realizing that, wait a second, I keep running things through the filter of what do I want? And like that there are certain products that we make that I wouldn't eat. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the reason that we make it. That's a personal flavor, choice. But understanding that I'm not my customer. So it took having that aha moment to wake up and listen to our regulars. And they're like, hey, why don't you carry a larger selection of cheese? Or, we really want some crackers. And you're like, well, I'm not just going to go buy some Triscuits or something. And then luckily we discovered Georgia sourdough was at the markets with us, and I think makes the best cracker in the world. But and crackers sell like crazy now. And you're like, it's so funny to look back and think, I wouldn't pay that much for a steak, so I'm not going to sell it. And now they sell like crazy. And you're like, why did I get in my own way? Like, I guess it's just that natural filter that you apply to things. And you're like, well, I don't like this, so why would I sell it? And so it really took breaking that filter to really open up. And the best way to learn on what you should do in business is listen to your good customers and really take the time when they come in to be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, what do you think of this? Are there any, you have any thoughts on that? And you're going to occasionally get that one customer that's just like, what if you made this bizarre product from this bizarre land? And you're like, okay, that's not a good idea. Yeah. But you will like develop just like listening to people and listening to people want more options than ribeyes in New York's and filet mignon. They want more options than chicken breasts. And listening to that and being like, you guys will support this. This is crazy. This is awesome. And so that really has helped with our growth of our product line.
Yeah, and there's two things out of there I want to talk about a little bit. The first is listening to your customers and the perception, because we often get so caught up in price as business owners because we're always like, we're trying to save $1 and we're trying to be profitable and we're like, everyone else must think this way. And so we get into this race to the bottom, as I call it. Everyone's always trying to make their product cheaper so more people buy it. But if you truly provide value to it, which is what you're doing, they're high quality products, number one. So that's value. Number two is you're adding in the education, the cards, the relationship with them, and the knowledge to go along with it. So people are willing to pay for it. The other part that I love, the second part, is you're focused on not just getting the product in the door the easiest way, like going to one broadliner and getting all your products from them that you need. You're going out, you said due south pickles and, Georgia sourdough. And I can't remember the other ones you mentioned earlier, but you're going out into the community, into other Georgia grown, and you're getting high quality, great products that match your same vision, which happens to be the things that are working for your customers. So you're finding other like-minded individuals and like-minded products to complement your existing business to accelerate your business forward and obviously make more money because you have more things to add. But putting a Triscuit in a high-end meat market would not be a good thing. It's a confusing message. And I think often people just try to get the highest profit item in the door and they miss the fact of why their customers are actually there, to your point.
Right. And then the value add of now working with these small local companies. If I went and bought Triscuits, the makers of Triscuit aren't going to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let's promote this company carrying our product. But working with these people that are as passionate at their craft as I am with mine. And they're like, hey, that's so cool. Like our crackers and preserves or cheeses or whatever are at your shop. And what to a much larger company would look like a small sale, to this company is a substantial sale. And so it really just gets the community excited, and it just keeps adding and adding and keeping that wheel moving forward.
Yeah, and people don't see that either. The most important thing yes, do you want a product line I create? I'm going to use bacon jam just because that's what we're talking about. And it's great if it goes into Walmart. Don't get me wrong. It's like I'm excelling at that. But it's not going to happen off the bat. You know what I mean? So in order to do that, you need to align yourself with similar businesses that complement your businesses. And that's what you're doing. So you're raising your level of business while raising their level of business, and you're doing it together. And like you said, cross-promoting each other. But the thing that happens is as you grow, you prepare for that big leap into a convenience store or a grocery store or a box store or whatever it is, or online sales if they really take off. It's like, to bite it off in one chew, no one's ever prepared, in one bite. You've got to take the steps necessary, and you've got to align yourself to the right parties of people that think the same way. And people don't know this either, but one of the things that happens is, in our case, that we do a lot of co-packing. But when a company like a Walmart or a Target comes to us, they're looking for a certain level of product that meets their standards. And when we have someone that we bring forward, and that person may work with a lot of other people, for whatever reason, through the conversations and the relationships those people have with similar-minded business, they're going into Walmart because Walmart wants that standard of business or that level of bacon jam, for example, in this case, since we're talking about it. And they have the ability to talk about it, and then they attract in those other customers purely by relationships and energy. And it's an interesting thing that happened. People think it's sell to get in there. But what happens is usually if you do it right like you're doing, someone gets in there, and then the curiosity begins, and through conversations and stuff, the next introductions are made because the first person built trust, and the first person that built trust already has trusting relationships with people that are like-minded and do similar products in terms of quality and customer base. So it, it's an important thing. You're always better together than you are alone, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so lastly, Rusty, as we begin to close this up, something that we're talking a lot about is leadership and ideals and what the ideal leader would be, because you're obviously leading your companies forward. So talk to me about some of the things that you feel are important for a leader to have in business as they're growing their business as you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. We spent quite a bit of time on this on the last podcast together, about how it was probably year 5 when I realized all of my managerial experience leading up to this point was in fine dining restaurants with the old French method of lead by fear and lead by power. And I had probably the first 5 years of Pine Street, I was a jerk, and I'm really embarrassed on how I led my company. And it took kind of working with some, all my butchers now, 2 of them have been there almost 6 years. And so they've been there ever since I went through this aha moment. And leading up to that, I couldn't keep a butcher longer than 8 months because it just was not a good work environment. I needed to stop. So that fear that I was putting into them was really coming from within me, and my fear of failure, my fear of, what if I leave the room and this product fails? Or then you have that lens on and you're looking for mistakes. So you're like, Carl over there just dropped a piece of bacon. He clearly doesn't care. Wow, I'm going to go yell at him. But now, hey, Carl, what happened? Why'd you drop that piece of bacon? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to carry it this way. No, you got to carry it this way. Oh, okay. And it's now solved, and he feels empowered. It's encouraging the staff now is what I've learned. I'm really big on we can all try one of our new products in a sterile environment. No, I want to give it to you to take home to brag in front of your family, so you can like have a moment of like, look what I created. And it's respecting the employee, joking with them on a very like dad G-rated level, growing up in kitchens and just seeing that mishandling of relationships and that blurred line of dating and working together that doesn't happen. It's your joke is like, hey, you sure look silly today. Like nothing too profound or over the top. But I think the biggest thing is understanding each employee is different and working with them. Right now we are developing systems because if I want to leave the building and, have my delivery guy be able to jump behind the counter or my shipping guy run and make a delivery, I have to have these systems in place, and understanding that everybody learns different and everybody is different. So these systems contain photos and descriptions and trying to, hit different levels of learning. And every one of these has a 3-ring binder on how to do it. That way the employee is empowered. They're designing it. It's a living document. So they're making updates of their department. It's actually something we're working on today and tomorrow. But I think I'm rambling, but I think it's the empowering the employee and respecting them and understanding that choosing to work for small businesses like mine, you're already taking a trust fall. And so they're there because they want to do a good job. They're not there for a quick, easy paycheck. They would have chosen a more corporate setting to where you can kind of get lost in the shuffle, and really celebrating their differences and empowering them any way that I can, I think is the appropriate way to lead.
No, I agree with that 100%. And the thing that I think is so important is we don't realize this. We think that we hear something or we do something and we can change it. What happened was you were actually dedicated to your business over a 5-year period. And during that 5-year period, you learned through things that had something change in your life. But it wasn't that it suddenly changed. It was all the experiences the 5 years before and the perseverance to keep moving forward. And then once you figured it out, you were able to adjust. But it wasn't like you gave up or this isn't the right business because I can't get the employees to do what I want. It was actually sticking through it, the dedication to your business, in some ways understanding that nothing good, great happens overnight. It takes long work and stuff like that. And I want the audience to just see that as entrepreneurs, that it takes a long time for us to gain experience in things, leadership, in management, in the products, in anything to get it launched off the ground. This is not something I create my product today, I launch it tomorrow. Like R&D aside, finding space if you're doing a restaurant, writing menus, finding the right people, getting the money together. It takes time, and there's a reason it takes time, because we need to learn the lessons for ourselves. And we want someone else to teach it to us. But, in my own experience, it didn't matter how much someone taught it to me. Maybe they planted a seed where like 7 years later, I'm like, oh, now I get why they said that. And don't get me wrong. I think people should be mentored and given advice, and people will listen to those things. But there's just certain things like managing people and understanding people that you really just have to go to do it. No one can really tell you how to do it.
Right. And if we took the time, and I was talking about this the other day with the general manager at Chop Shop, that he had gotten in the way of a successful thing, and it was his fault. And it's just like he was kind of beating himself up. And I go, look, if we took the time to be perfect at our craft, and for us entrepreneurs running a company, if we took the time to be perfect in all aspects of running the company, I still wouldn't be open. I would still be trying to figure that out. Like, it is understanding that we are going to make some eyebrow raising mistakes along the way that we look back on and it looks horrendous, but it shaped, the moment that we're in right now. And so it is that growth, and it's, sometimes it takes 5 years, and sometimes it may take 14, 15, but you'll get there, and you will, prosper and learn and understand and grow along the way.
And I think it's incredibly important in that we as human beings think are hard on ourselves when we make a mistake, but we make way more mistakes than we don't. And they don't need to be mistakes if we learn from them and they don't repeat themselves. So, I don't want someone to fail, but the fact that they have, or I know they're willing to, and then learn from it is so much more attractive to me as an employee or as a manager or as even a business partner than someone who thinks they never do any wrong, or a person who wants to be perfect all the time. Because the seeking of perfection, while you want to perfect a skill or you want to make progress, trying to be perfect in and of itself limits your ability to actually learn from it. So if you're learning to try to perfect a skill, knowing that you'll never be perfect, but you can always make progress towards that perfection is different than trying to be perfect in the moment.
Well, absolutely. And I was training one of the retail people at Pine Street how to do a certain cut that they have never done before. And he royally screwed it up and ruined the piece of meat. And he was being really hard on himself. And I was like, look, this is the entire reason we're training right now. Wouldn't it have been weird if you did this difficult cut perfectly, having never done this before, ever before? Like, that would have been the weird thing. Of course you're going to make a mistake. Of course, starting a business, you're going to fall on your face and have to make some uncomfortable phone calls. It's just going to happen. Like, it's understanding you are going to make mistakes, understanding that sometimes you're the person at fault and just taking it on the chin and not blaming others, and being at a personal teachable moment instead of a screaming at other people and blaming them moment. You're going to grow faster, and you're going to understand that, hey, no one's perfect. And it really, we say no one's perfect and just kind of let it wash off, but really soak that in, that you're not perfect. You're going to screw up. Just learn from it.
Yeah. And it's so true. And I want to just talk about this too, while I have you on the podcast, is we talked a little bit about before we got on. And, if you always thought you made a mistake, I want to finish the other comment and then get into this. But if you always thought you were making a mistake and you were going to do it perfectly the first time, there wouldn't be much purpose in our lives. Like, the purpose as a human being is to constantly grow. That's the whole, from the time we're born to the time we die, if we're not constantly growing, we're wasting our life, right? So, that's if we have the mindset, or I always hear people, I'm too old, or I'm too short, or I'm not skilled in this. Well, you have time. You're not dead. So grow in whatever direction and take the time to do it now. And every moment is a moment to learn and grow as a human being and have a purpose. And so I think that's just so important, and trying to get the employees or the managers or the supervisors to see that there's something much bigger than just what you're doing. You're helping people grow. You're growing yourself. You're helping me grow because I didn't know that before. And if you can know that I want to learn also as an entrepreneur, then you're more open to give me information. So I wanted to talk about that, which is hugely important. But the next thing I wanted to quick talk about and take this thing full circle is, we talked a little bit about Flavor of Georgia, and Flavor of Georgia's in April, but you've entered 3 products, which I assume are 4 products.
Yep.
4 new products. So you've obviously been creative over the last year in trying to develop these products. So tell us a little bit about that.
So when we first opened Chop Shop, we wanted to have just a standard table mustard on the counter, and we couldn't find a locally made story behind it kind of mustard to have, just a straight, spreadable yellow mustard. And so Summer, my fiance, and I, that weekend, Saturday and Sunday, made, I think, 4 or 5 different mustards until we found the right one. And that's our hot honey mustard that we now have. And so we've entered that. The other one that's got all 4 have great stories behind them. But another one is we've worked hand in hand with Beautiful Briny Sea to develop some spice blends. And we have entered our summer spice. It's our floral. It's roasted shallots, sage and thyme, and a little bit of lavender. We've entered that seasoning in as well. And Beautiful Briny Sea has been a lot of fun to work with, and kind of developing labels and brands, and all. We have, I think it's 5 or 6 different spice blends we now have with them, and they all look similar, so they look right together, but different enough. Then the third item is our dry cured Brezola, which is our eye around of beef. And that's featuring beef from Joyce Farms. It's raised here in Georgia and processed in North Carolina. But that's cured with juniper and rosemary. And it was a finalist for a Good Food Award in San Francisco last month. And our Sweetheart ham won a Good Food Award last month, which is kind of cool. But now the fourth item is our all chicken smoked sausage. So we work a lot with Chef Thomas at the Hyatt Regency. He is the biggest purchaser of Georgia grown products, and I think in Georgia. He doesn't do enough to brag about himself, but even their employee cafeteria, the Hyatt Regency is on a historic site of the civil rights movement. And so his employee cafeteria buys all their ingredients from 3 local African-American farmers. And through that cafeteria support these farmers.
That's awesome.
But working with him, he needed a non-pork chicken sausage, and he wasn't happy with the commodity one that he was buying. He kind of felt funny about it, and it wasn't in line with his ethics. So together we made a all Springer Mountain chicken sausage and natural lamb casing. And that's the smoked chicken sausage that we've entered. So it's sage and black pepper and chilies and 100% chicken and lamb casing. So that one was a lot of fun to develop.
I love all those. I'm like drooling over here. I'm hoping they all make it to Flavor Georgia so I can try them all as a judge.
Yeah, these are all items that we've developed over the past year. So it's been talking earlier about what you were saying, like with the chefs trying different things so they don't get stagnant. And that's through friendships, through working with my fiance, through coming up with ideas with employees is how I break that. At 11 years, I'm not bored. And so it's coming up with talking about the GM of Chop Shop and breaking down that chuck roll to find different steaks. And that's something that we just started like a week and a half ago, and they're selling like crazy. And we're going to do more of it tomorrow and dig deeper to find different cuts than we did last week. So that shared, love of learning with all of these, beautiful Brian E.C., Chef Thomas, Summer, our GM, our retail employees, that love of learning is what keeps me inspired to keep growing.
Well, and one of the things I love about what you just said is in episode 67, we actually talked to Susie Sheffield of Beautiful Brian E.C. And one of the things we talk about in that episode is how she seeks out these partnerships to build her brand and other brands. And we sort of talk about it on this podcast. And then you mentioned working with her on it. And it's one of those things that's exactly it. If you partner with people that are like-minded or that can complement your business and you can complement theirs, you're both going to grow. I mean, you can't, everyone thinks it's 1 + 1 = 2 in a scenario like this, but it's what actually happens because of the energy in the universe and the energy in that you guys put out is 1 + 1 actually equals 3. Is you've now got your own product, you've got their product, and you've got a third product. So 1 + 1 actually equals 3. And so
I like that.
That's the way it is. And it's the same with Chop Shop for you. It's Riverview Farms plus Pine Street Market, 1 + 1 = 3, which is the third thing you guys are doing, which is Chop Shop. And, or did I miss that? Riverview Farms plus Pine Street equals Chop Shop. I don't know if I said that correctly. But it's the same idea. And if you think about it that way, energy in business and entrepreneurship and customers is not a mathematical equation. While you want to keep track of your finances mathematically, the reality is the more partnerships you build, the more people that are like-minded as you become a stronger force, and the more energy and the more similar clients you guys share, or customers. And so that's pretty cool. I love that.
And the collaborations always, and also just like, you're not going to, just like a music collaboration, you're not going to go take a weak song. I'm not going to take a weak recipe to Susie. Like, I now have to up my game as she ups her game to make something even better. Just like with Riverview, like we had to bring our best to join together. You don't just bring your mediocre board. You're now like, oh, I'm on my toes. Like, these collaborations, I can't present to Chef Thomas a sausage that I'm not fully excited about, I've got to step it up and make something excellent. So that too, with the collaborations, is that what you're creating is going to be one of your best. It's not going to just be some offhanded thing.
And I love that, and I didn't realize it until you said it, although I guess I knew it subconsciously, is it's not only about the creativity you guys create together, being both creative, but it's also pushing each other to a higher level. Like you're a sports team, you get better by playing against better individuals, not by people that are, for lack of a better term, not as skilled as you are, or ones that you can beat easily. It's about finding someone that challenges you to that next level, and then you can grow as a person and they can grow as a person.
Right.
And I think that's pretty amazing. And the beauty of it is, as an athlete, you only have so much time being at the top before you wind out. But being in food and beverage or an entrepreneur, you can continue to grow forever if you choose to, and you find the right people to consistently challenge you, whether it's a mentor or, like we just said, a collaboration.
Yeah.
So, Rusty, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome. And before we get off, will you just tell people where they can find both Pine Street Market and Chop Shop on social media and online?
Heck yeah. So pinestreetmarket.com it's our web store. We ship nationally, usually for most regions of Atlanta. Of the US, if you spend more than $100, it's free shipping. It's also where we have everything about our classes and our monthly butcher box that we create, that we partner with different restaurants or different food producers to produce a monthly box. Facebook is Pine Street Market. Instagram is Pine Street Market, and I think it's Pine Street for Twitter. Chop Shop is chopshopatl.com. And there's classes on there as well and recipes as well. And then it's Chop Shop ATL on Instagram, and I think it's just Chop Shop on Facebook. But yeah, we're constantly showing beautiful, visual, fun things that we're doing, or people that we love and support, or fun things coming up, or classes, and we daily are pushing stuff. A good friend of mine said that social media is like taking a shower. If you don't do it every day, you stink.
Yeah.
So we try to constantly have fun stuff up there to keep people engaged and to let them know what's going on.
That's awesome. Thank you again, Rusty, and everyone listening in. If you like what we did on this podcast, obviously share it with your friends and family, and go check out Pine Street Market and Chop Shop ATL, and go there if you happen to be in the Georgia area. Make a visit. I think that would be awesome. Again, thank you, Rusty, and thank you, everyone, for listening in, and have a great day.
Thank you.